ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام المؤمنون هينون لينون كالجمل آنف إن قيد إنقاد وإن أنيخ على صخرة استناخ، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, community members, and everybody that is out there that joins us now or later. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it such that this world is a place of test for all that dwell in it, and especially for the believer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us prime examples in the Quran about the people of the past. Because a reading nation is a successful nation. Those that take an ibrah, in Arabic the word is ibrah, which means take an example of those that came before them. Right? As a person gets older, they realize time and time again how much like their mother and father they become. As much as they like to distinguish themselves, and we all like to distinguish ourselves, many a times we end up repeating the same mistakes because we didn't listen or heed the lessons of life. And in a very similar fashion, subhanAllah, as we mentioned last week, in the story of Moses, the story of Musa alayhi salam, and the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, and the Pharaoh, there's really a lot of examples for us to really take and enjoy. There is something there of hope. There is something there of a guiding light. There is something there to remember. There is something there to be thoughtful. And there is an aspect of relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and improving that which is in ourselves. You notice time and time again that successful people don't talk about other people, but they talk about ideas. They talk about concepts. They talk about how to improve themselves. And people who are not successful, they blame others for everything that is happening in their life. This person is doing this or this one is doing that. He said and she said. We see in the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us, as it is mentioned, آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا, that we gave him knowledge, hikman, and we gave him wisdom, and we made him strong, right? Every single prophet, if we look into the stories of the prophet, we know that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was known as as-sadiq al-amin, the truthful and the trustworthy. And in a very same fashion, every single prophet had a very similar quality before they became prophets. They were truthful and they were trustworthy. And we find in the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he ran away from Misr and he ran away from Egypt, right? And as we described last week, the scene that was there, Egypt was at the height of its civilization. What today people call ancient Egypt. We have to know that it's so old that the Romans, who you and me will call ancient, the Romans used to look at the ancient Egyptians and say, they're ancient. That was thousands of years ago. Wow. So they were at the height of their civilization at this time. And he runs away from there, even though he was the prince of the country, or, he was, the main person, right? And he runs away because of an act that was done. And in this period and in this story, he comes to a place that we know as Madian. And Madian is a land that is in the northeast of Mecca and Medina. It is northeast of that land. All right? And he goes to Madian, and as he's traveling, he finds at a group of wells or at a water hole, an oasis of some kind where people were coming to feed and water their animals. He finds two young ladies, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسَ, we find a group of people there, يَسْقُونَ, that they were feeding their animals. And what was happening was, because there was this, your pecking order, you could say. There was a pecking order. And because of this pecking order, these two young ladies could not, water their animals. And Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, as his nature was such, he used to always like to just, this is not right. Right? And we know that. That was the reason why he had to run. That was the reason why he had to run away from Egypt. And he looked at it and he said, no, this is not right. And so the importance of a person knowing and recognizing when something's not right, to take the right step. So obviously, what did he do? He didn't yell, he didn't scream, didn't tell people off. What did he do? He looked at the young women and he said, give me your animals, and I will go and assist you. I will go and water them. Because he knows by default, when people see him, he's young, tall, handsome of an individual. The Prophet ﷺ said, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, كَأَنَّهُ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَزْدِ الشَّنُوءَ. The Prophet ﷺ used to describe Musa alayhi salatu wasalam as a man of the tribe of Azd al-Shanua, right? Azd al-Shanua, they were known to be, tall, dark, and handsome, in a manner of speaking. So he sees this person and he goes and he grabs his cattle and he goes, okay, let me go and, water them. Let me go and feed them for you. And he takes those cattle and he waters them. إِنَّهُ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. As one of the women were to describe him later on, they were so enamored by him, so enamored by Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, right? Well, you and me would say, that's one to hold on to, right? That's one to hold on to. And they were so enamored by him. So he went and he watered the cattle, and he returned the cattle without asking for anything. No favors. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, that إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. That we feed you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The qualities of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the qualities of the beloved companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? In these qualities, there is success and there is happiness. There is a means of solving our problems here today. And he goes and he waters these cattle. And what does one of them tell him? She says, let us take you to my father, to our father. Let us take you there, and we want you to come and meet him. And who was their father? Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophet Shu'aib. Right? The Prophet Shu'aib. He was the father of these girls. And because he needed their assistance, they went out and they helped their dad in his daily work. And Musa alayhi salatu wasalam accepts the offer. You know what? He's got nothing better going on anyway. He says, okay, let me come with you. And on this journey, there is another explanation there for us. There's something else to benefit from. That we know he's honest, he's fair, and he's not devious. He's not devious. He is true in his nature, innocent, right? Not trying to get something from someone, and working them. No, he was honest, mashallah. And that's the quality of a believer. As-sadiq al-amin, to be honest and to be trustworthy, right? And so he tells the girls while he's walking, and he says to them, hold on, this is not the right way of doing this. What you do is you walk, right, in a fashion that I don't have to see you, but, in a manner, what he's saying is, it's in the middle of nowhere. He wants to be respectful of these girls. And he said, just throw the rock and I will know the direction. So guide me indirectly. And subhanallah, he makes a dua. And he says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. He makes a dua and he says that, oh Allah, doesn't matter whatever you give me, oh Allah. Whatever you give me, I am faqir. Like even if you give me the whole world, I'm a faqir. I don't have anything. There is nothing in this world that will ever be in any comparison to your great treasures and to your great bounties. And so the believer, when the believer looks at the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, or in fact the story of any of the prophets, we get a motivation, to do the right thing, even when, there's not applause for us, even when, to do the right thing and to help others and to go out of our way, because that is the way of the deen, subhanallah, right? That is the way of the deen. And subhanallah, we find in this story that later on what happens, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him what anybody else would have wanted in the similar situation. He still got it, but he got it in such an honorable fashion. He got it in such a fashion, right, that it's the best way, right? Because he did the right thing. And that's what happens when you knock the door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the correct way. We all want things. We all want it now. But when you're patient, in Allah ma'a sabirin, Allah is with the patient people. Allah is with the people who are patient and they have foresight, right? They have foresight. And so subhanallah, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he comes to Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam, both prophets now. And of course, Musa alayhi salam was not a prophet at this time. He was just Musa, right? And he was Musa from Al-Imran, right? He was the Hebrew Musa. And Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam is amongst the Arab prophets, right? So they're not even from the same background, right? Shu'aib alayhi salam is an Arab. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is a Hebrew. He's a Jew, right? Muslim essentially, but in his ethnicity, he's a Hebrew. And so subhanallah, Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam's daughter tells him that, it tells her dad, she says, ista'jirhu. Get him to work. This guy does the job properly. He knows how to do the job. So ista'jirhu. Get him to work for you. Innahu laqawiyyun amin. He's strong and he's trustworthy. Right? So get him to work for you. And subhanallah, the father understood the message. The father understood the message. This is not just a job. This is also about developing a family. And he realizes this young man, he's honest, he's strong, mashallah, he can work hard. He says, I will marry you one of my two daughters. Ihdabnatay. That you work for me, right, for the next 8 to 10 years. You choose, whichever one you want. 8 or 10 years, you work for me. And you stay with me. And that is an apprenticeship. It's also another sign for us that he stayed with Shu'aib alayhi salatu. Before he was doing all the great things of taking the Bani Israel out of the occupation that they were in, or out of the difficulty that they were in Egypt, he had to stay with Shu'aib alayhi salam for 8 to 10 years to sit with a prophet. And the prophet tells you, now he's not just a prophet, he's his father-in-law. Okay? He's his father-in-law. And he stays with him. And he gets his tarbiyah. And he gets his adab, mashallah. And then later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him the best of message. And Musa goes from Musa to Musa Kalimullah. From Musa al-Imran to Musa Kalimullah. The one who spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, that was his gift. He could have ready conversations with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah next week and the week beyond, we'll try and inshallah ta'ala continue with this beautiful story. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inshallah ta'ala, before we continue with the wrapping up of the khutbah, just a couple of announcements, inshallah. First and foremost, of course, we are aware of the situation around the world, and so we make dua for everybody, not only for the people in Gaza, but for everybody that it's around there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make it easy for all those people who are suffering around the world and who are going through difficulties. And we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same beautiful and peaceful existence that we have here, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bless all of the human beings with this ability to have peace and inshallah ta'ala to have tranquility and to be able to raise their children in an area of safety and of goodness. So we make dua for everyone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant that ability to them. Secondly, as you know, there is an announcement, surprisingly, mashallah, that has been given about the Hajj program. So please inquire to those people who've got the more information about that. If you are interested in that program, please do inquire to Brother Tahir and the Sheikh as well, Sheikh Haytham, about that, inshallah ta'ala, if you are interested in that endeavor. And inshallah, it becomes a reality as well. We make dua, inshallah ta'ala. As we know, the situation's always constantly changing, so we make dua that also becomes a reality. But that is a good news, mashallah. In a period of time, we don't have that news. Allahumma ighfir li wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minat wal muslimina wal muslimat al ahya'i minhum wal amwat innaka sami'un qaribun mujibud da'wat. Allahumma habbib ilayna al iman wa zayyinhu fi qulubina wa karrih ilayna al kufra wal fusuqa wal isyan waj'alna min al rashidin waj'alna min al mahdiyyin waj'alna min ibadika as salihin. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام إليك يعود السلام هينا ربنا بالسلام وأدخلنا الدار السلام وصلى الله تعالى خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقم الصلاة.